Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Coast-to-Coast Combat Hour. I'm your host, Matthew Hawkins, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Ed Carbajal. Ed, survived UFC 300, kinda. Uh, I guess.
First, we should open
How
with
you doing? How are you doing?
first we should open with we don't know shit about these fights anymore because some of the calls we made. At first I'd like to apologize to Max Holloway for not believing in him, and yeah, like I keep hearing the Roy Jones Jr. You almost have forgot playing in my mind because that
Well, listen,
obviously
listen, listen. That was. Yes, I was wrong about that one. I'm not going to kick myself completely. I had the main
no,
event right. I had the co-main event right.
yeah,
You went with Holly
yeah,
Holm. I called the mauling. I nailed the Kyla Harrison fight.
yeah. No,
Um, I had
I
Figueiredo. So
I
yeah, I
had
guess I
Figueiredo,
guess
yeah.
yeah, okay. So I mean, I don't think it was terrible. If I nailed them all, I'd be a multimillionaire.
I
Hitting
actually had
parlays.
Figueiredo by submission, which he did. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
No, it was a top to bottom. It was as good of a night of fights that we've had in memory.
every now and then they do something to make you remember like what they were, why we love the sport, and a card like that is like what's representative of what the UFC was, and like ever since they went regulated, it was definitely. When we're only going through the first quarter of the year, so far this year, it's probably the best card I've seen all year. Some of the best fights I've seen.
I mean, I
Uh,
think without a doubt, top to bottom, it's one of the top, if not the best, it's one of the top 2, 3 UFC cards of
mhm,
all time. I'm not going to talk pride stuff. Here's the deal. I'm going to give you more credit because in the golden times there was like 9 or 10 fights. Now we're like 13. This card I believe
mhm,
had 13 fights, or
mhm,
was it 12? But I think it was 13 because it started at 3:30. Um, Regardless though, so you're adding more fights in an era where there's egos and stuff and guys not wanting to fight on the first fight of the card. You get two former champions.
mhm,
I did find it comical when people were like, "Oh wow, like Vegas is full for the first fight." And
mhm,
I thought to myself, like, well, of course. When you put good fights on, people
mhm.
are going to show up. So I don't understand. I mean, the UFC, will they ever, are they going to do this very often? No,
No.
probably not, because they don't. I don't know why they wouldn't. I don't know how you can brag about gates. I don't know how you can brag about viewership. And the only thing you changed is you made every fight good
Mhm,
and every fight worthwhile of watching. And they're confused, and it's like they reinvented the wheel, and now everybody's like, oh my gosh, ESPN viewership's up. 9,000 people came through the gate before the first fight. All time, on ESPN Plus, all time on Fight Pass, all time on ESPN, pay-per-view record break. I mean, it's like, well, okay. I mean, yeah, this is what happens.
mhm,
I almost tweeted it out. I don't use Twitter as much anymore, but to me, this is the first event where I felt like it was the Super Bowl of MMA.
mhm,
I feel like this was the promise of events that we were going to have constantly when the UFC absorbed Strikeforce, Pride,
mhm.
WEC, everybody. And for it to take what, 15 years basically for us to get to this point where where we get an event like this. There's been 205 was great, 189 was great. A lot of those weren't the cards though. A lot of those, 205 had a stacked card. 189 just had fights that delivered left and right. That was just a night of violence, but it was the Jeremy Stevens and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So it wasn't the world champions necessarily. It was just the dudes going out there and putting it on the line on a big event. But I mean, it was, I mean, I know it hurt you for the Gagey thing, but I jumped out of my seat for Holloway. It was the most reaction I can remember since,
Well, I'll tell you this.
I was
I
little.
mean that fight. The last time I was on my feet in my living room, the whole from round one to the end of the fight was for like maybe Moreno Figueiredo fights, and this fight was one that as soon as it started, I was like zeroed in watching it. Um, the thing about that fight is like I completely forgot about uh the intelligent the intelligence that Max Holloway has in approaching, especially the stuff he kind of like said afterwards. None of these guys we know from talk when we've had fighters on the show, fighters I've interviewed. Um, None of them like to reveal their actual game plan and what they know or don't know, what they've been studying until it's all over with. And the stuff that Holloway knew about Gaethje going in and what he had in mind, you could tell he did his homework on him, and the stuff that he just said afterward, and even with everything he had, all the advantages and everything he went in there with. One thing that I mean, what makes Holloway cool is that he was scared the whole time, even when he was winning. Like he admitted after the fact that he was like every time he heard him before he actually finished him, he said there was moments where he was like, I have him hurt, and he thought about going in for the kill, and he was like, he's like, but the way he was looking at me when I heard him, he was like, I felt like he was gonna, to not so many words, but he felt it was too dangerous to come at him. He called him. He said Justin Gaethje's made of titanium, and he was just like he actually said something along the lines of like I don't know if I'd fight him again, but he was just like I mean those last 10 seconds, even with all that going through his mind, and those last 10 seconds to still go and risk it all with those fears that you had. That I mean, we completely well deserved title. The right guy's holding the belt right now, and I don't mind eating my words on that fight. I mean, again, I'm still Justin Gaethje all the way. For his next fight, I'll be first in line talking shit for him about on him for him about like the next fight. I'm still Team Gaethje because I think the dude is just something unique for this current era of MMA. But I mean, damn, to Max Holloway, I don't know why I forgot about him as good as he was, but I wish I didn't put my money on Gaethje. It's the first time I ever lose money on Gaethje, very first time.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it was it was a he put on the really, I mean, one of the best performances of his career, and both guys came to fight. I mean, those leg
Mm-hmm.
kicks early from Gagey, I mean, dropped him. I know the official scores or whatever, the
Fuck that.
nonsense going on. I
Yeah,
mean, it was more of a knock. It was just as much of a knockdown as Pahea stepping on on
yeah,
Hill's foot, in the main event. I mean, in theory,
mm-hmm.
that was more of a trip. I know he landed a
Yeah.
huge punch, but so
And I gotta say something else because it's really fucking bothering me. It's because I had a friend call me after the home Harrison fight. And the thing about that one, you were again, you had that, you knew it from. I didn't know. I mean, Holly Holm for me, and I don't like to knock fighters and stuff like that, but she's consistently the most annoying fighter that I ever. Every time she fights, she does something to just completely irk me. And the one time that I pick her, that I root for her, and I think she's gonna do something, opening round, she goes and does the stupidest shit ever, which is clinched with the judo Olympic gold medalist. Like when she did that, I'm alone here, and I'm yelling out. I'm yelling like, "What the fuck are you doing?" And then everything you said that would happen happened, and I was just like, she did a video afterwards where she says that wasn't the game plan. That's not what we trained for. So why the fuck you do it? I mean, I don't know. I don't understand it, but maybe like it's one of those times that when Dana White was like, I think it's time. Dana White said he'd like to see her retire, and I'm 100% agreeing with it. If you have a game plan that you train for and your team trained for, and then you go out there and do you fucking throw the whole thing out the window with no one telling you to do so, then maybe it is. I mean, she's 42. I know she could probably kick my ass, but I'm just fuck it, dude. Like, get out.
listen,
Oh,
I need to eat some crow though because Harrison did make weight, looked good. I
mhm,
mean, she looked like everybody else at the weigh-ins, dehydrated and
mhm,
drawn out, but um, she made weight and she went up there and she kicked ass, and it's the title's hers. Like barring
yeah.
a fluke injury during a fight or
Yeah.
a cut or something like that, I don't see anybody even giving her I don't want to say this because there's always eventually it always kicks somebody in the ass, something turns
Yeah.
around. But if everybody shows up to the best abilities, I don't see anybody that can beat her
Mhm,
until we get like some big striker at that weight class. Basically Nunes, until Nunes comes back, like I don't know if there's anybody that can really hang with her. I mean, Pacheco beat her, and Pacheco was, you know, on that night, and I think Harrison probably was kind of maybe over PFL
mhm,
mentally, even going through that whole tournament.
mhm.
So there might have been something there. Not to be in a total excuse, but Checo and
Yeah.
Cyborg's going to be a great fight. But
I'm bringing up the UFC ranking because we always record this on Tuesday, and that's when the rankings get updated after every event. So I just want to see where she landed. It was at bantamweight, and Harrison. She
4.
came in at number 4, which home was 5. So she jumped over Irene Aldana now. So now she's got Mayra Buena Silva, Ketlin Vera, Juliana Pena, and Raquel Pennington. That's who's in front of her for the bantamweight title.
If you placed odds in front of me that she would go into it and she'd fight all 3 of those women back to back to back to back, all 4 of them, I would bet money on Kyla Harrison to come out at the end of the night.
Well, I mean,
I don't see. I mean, honestly, like what Vera maybe big punch. Like what is Pena gonna submit her? Like I guess maybe if she dives into a guillotine or something. But like barring her making a first stage jiu-jitsu air, like I don't see it. She's too strong, and if she starts using those elbows, she couldn't use elbows in PFL. This was the first time we saw her really start to throw elbows, and she was
yeah, outside of
wrecking.
her Invicta thing, yeah, that's I mean, she wrecked when she used them in Invicta, and she really liked it, and she obviously put work in with those there at 300. What do you think about I mean, it seemed like that's something that could lure Nunez back.
It seemed like to be the case. I would like to see Nunes stay away a little bit though. Like let the division maybe kind of
Mhm.
grow a little bit without her there. Because if
Yeah,
she comes back and beats Harrison, then you might as well close the division down.
yeah,
Like you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like I think we got to look at 2 years maybe. And if
Hmm.
Harrison's able to defend that, you get the belt, maybe defend it like 3 times,
Yeah, yeah,
against those people, then
yeah.
I think that maybe even 1 or 2 defense, depending on how dominant it is and how long
Hmm.
it takes those fights to
And
happen.
plus,
But
I mean, at the end of the day, the UFC looks at marketability numbers and what they can draw. So if they could do it next weekend, because everything points to that with all the data they do, I mean, it can happen whenever. We know the. I mean, the rankings are just kind of like a backup planning sheet. We know rankings don't matter.
yeah, I mean, I didn't like Harrison like calling for an interim title shot in June. I didn't like that. I thought that was a little premature. Although I do think that she should is properly ranked now for her first fight in the
Mm-hmm.
UFC. But I think that was a little disrespectful. I know Pennington wants to wait. I think more towards the endish of the year. She won the title, first time champ, long time fighter. I don't want to disrespect Raquel Pennington. If she wants to sit on the title for 6 months, like I'm not going to hold that against somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't think she's going to hold it much after that. So I'm okay with her kind of, having the title, being a champ for a little while here and that kind of stuff. But I'd like to see Harrison take another fight. I think she's basically a number one at 4. If she beats one of the 3 ladies in front of her, she essentially, becomes the number 1 contender. I think that's a
Mm-hmm.
great main card fight for June. If they wanted to do her and Buena Silva or her and Vieira or I don't know though everybody's booked out right now, but any of those fights, I think is a good qualifying fight for her to then look towards the end of the year. She always acted like she wanted. I don't want to say acted. She was fairly active, especially during the tournament time of PFL, and she seemed to want to fight when she wasn't fighting. So
Mm-hmm.
let's hope that you know the UFC kind of just lets her fight and she doesn't necessarily wait for the title because I think she's so much better than everybody. I don't think she's not in the Justin Gaethje situation. Gaethje took a chance fighting Holloway.
Yeah,
You know, I don't think that's the kind of thing. She's not guaranteed any kind of title right now, nothing like that.
yeah,
So I'd like to see her just kind of wreck some people, make some highlights, and become that wrecking machine that
yeah.
you're blueprinted to be.
Going back to Justin Gaethje and Holloway, one of the other things I came to kind of like, I feel like I didn't notice because of my whole fanboyness about the guy. We always talk about the Justin Gaethje effect and how fights with him and the other fighters kind of carry the damage from their fights into their fights after him. But he takes a lot of damage too, and I think we didn't. I'm not taking into account that maybe he's starting to show that. Um, the fact that Holloway was able to hurt him so early in the first round with that I mean that with that kick that cracked his nose. I mean, it's crazy that spinning kick is something Holloway only, I think he used it like maybe once before, but like it's something that him in his tape study that, again, he said after the fact that I'm trying to remember, I don't remember word for word, but he was like, when you hit him, he doesn't go anywhere. When he tries to counterpunch, he doesn't go anywhere. And he was talking about his lack of like foot movement and head movement. So if you watch the fight again, you see Holloway's side to side, like in and out, combos and then exits and then circles. Even before that final exchange happened, he was circling him. He went back and then around and then called him to the center of the. He was controlling the space, even though he was on the outside, which is a lot of people that call themselves fight analysts say, oh, taking the center of the cage, it's usually that guy's fight, but that's not necessarily the case if you want the space and the range. Guys like Adesanya, guys that have wrestling backgrounds that put their back to the cage so they have the rest of the space so they could drive into you for takedowns. That's not always the case. And man, Holloway definitely. Yeah, I don't know what do you even want to see him do next? I mean, he seemed to want Tapuria, and I mean today he did an interview with Honolulu, a local Honolulu station, where he said it's either he'd like to Tapuria, or if not, he wants McGregor. Which I'm kind of like, why are you even going to mention? I know McGregor's a money fight, but you don't even know if he's for sure. Even though they announced it, we still don't know if he's for sure coming back against Chandler until. I mean, I'm not for nothing until I see him in the same city as Chandler and doing things to make weight. I still don't feel like we're too far out to guarantee that fight's going to happen.
Yes, but to be fair to McGregor, when his name's been on the marquee, he's always showed up.
Uh-huh.
So I don't. When the money's on the table and
Yeah,
his name and reputation as far as that goes,
that's
he
true.
seems to be pretty good with that. So, and Chandler ain't missing the fight. If Chandler might break his neck next week and he's going to show up in a wheelchair. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
he's,
yeah.
like he no. So, yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know what Tapuria sounds awfully tasty of a fight.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you talk about style wise, it's kind of similar to what we just saw. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
not so much, but two guys who can really put each other's lights out. And
Yeah.
I Holloway was more of a, he knocked him out with that, but he's like we said though, he's more of a, it's the bulk, it's the Nick Nate Diaz effect,
Mm-hmm.
where he just keeps hitting you and hitting you and hitting you. This was the first time this was just two guys who basically did, let's take 10 steps, turn around and draw. I mean, that's what we
Mm-hmm.
got here.
Mm-hmm.
I almost feel like Gagey's newer style of kind of precision Gagey and thinking Gagey almost hurts him in that fight.
Mm.
Had he gone in there like the whirlwind he used to be, like in World Series of Fighting in his first couple, and he just went out there and it was pointing to the ground in round one,
Yeah. Oh,
without
yeah.
a broken nose and all that, I
Yeah.
feel like that was more the fight that he could have. The longer that fight went, it was always going to be trouble for Gagey. I felt like, because that meant he wasn't hurting Holloway to the point where he was putting him out.
Yeah. No,
Like,
the nose thing was definitely a heavy factor in that fight. And again, I'm not making excuses for him, because even Holloway even said if it was any other fighter, because the training at altitude that Gaethje does out there, and with wherever Whitman's camp is, I'm forgetting right now, but
New
uh,
Mexico? No.
elevation. Where the hell is he
Oh,
trained?
Colorado.
Team, yeah. Um, so even Holloway was like, if it was anyone else that didn't train at elevation like he does, with the nose issue messing with his breathing, they would have quit, from fatigue or whatever earlier than that. Plus, I mean, the people he had in his corner, I mean, because his nose looked good after it happened, like maybe round 2, round 3, and then it didn't seem like it started bothering him until the championship rounds. I think that's why he was able to drop Holloway in the second round. But it's I wouldn't. I mean, a rematch with them wouldn't be too bad either. But I mean, that knockout, I don't think we're going to see Jake Gaethje for a while. Um,
That fight should stand alone. It was a
yeah,
great fight. It had
yeah,
the most epic ending
that's
maybe
true.
ever. I don't feel like we need to do that. I don't think KG doesn't need to prove anything. You know what I
No.
mean? Like, there's guys out there for him to fight. There's still a bunch of good fights, and even at 170, maybe he doesn't cut
Mm,
anymore, and he just says, "Hey, I'm going to bulk up a little bit and let's go. Go for Colby Covington or something like that." I don't
mm,
know, but I don't know. I think I think at this point in his career, title's probably not in the picture for the UFC. I mean, and I say that meaning that he has a chance to still have a handful of just epic money making fights, and I don't think that's terrible.
Mm,
But I don't think he wins them all. I don't against that killer row of the lightweights. It's going to be hard to go on another.
mm,
Well, but you don't have to, I guess. Poirier's on a one fight win streak. I mean, it's the right place, right time. You just got to have a big win. He needs to go out there and knock a top 5, top 6 guy's head off in his
mm.
next fight. Get back after like the James Vick kind of hype and the that kind of thing where he was just decapitating fools. He needs to really do that again, and then all of a sudden he's back in the mix because he's always a fighter everybody wants to watch.
Yeah.
But I mean, a Chandler rematch down the line, a McGregor fight with him to me still is a good fight. I
I would love to see it just for malicious reasons. I don't know, but I don't see them. I don't see them putting him. I mean, they seem to do like matching McGregor. McGregor seems to call his own shots. Number one, number two. It seems like the fights McGregor's going to get now is going to be fights like this fight with that they announced with Chandler. These guys that are kind of on they're on their like maybe the last leg of their career, however many years it may be. Um, so I don't know if Gaethje's there. I guess maybe he is with all the wars he's been in. But I yeah, that's a fight. That, I
I
mean,
mean,
they've
I think
tried to
he's
make it
getting there.
before.
Like, if McGregor wins and he doesn't get a title shot, I
Mm-hmm.
think Gaethje's probably a good fight, right? Like, it's 2 top 5 guys at that point
Yeah.
fighting. Like, I mean, I don't. It would be it would and then I don't know. To me,
It also seems like
to me it's not a good fight for Gaethje
yeah,
because I feel like McGregor could potentially be like essentially what we saw with Holloway. I think those
yeah.
straight punches this could really it can just cause damage. But
Yeah.
you know,
The
but
other
I
thing about McGregor too is even if he does, like you said, if his name's on the marquee, he'll do International Fight Week, whatever. But then after that, do we go through all this again for another fucking year to get him in another like, you know what I mean? Like
if he wins, I would say that he probably wants to fight at MSG a couple months later
yeah,
because
yeah.
at that point he'll have a new contract or he'll be
Mm-hmm.
on the end of his contract and he's going to want to get it over with. Um, I could see that happening. I just it wouldn't surprise me if that was his if he wins if he tries to stay active because I mean he can't be stupid. He's got to know that if he steps away again and he keeps doing what he was doing in between these last fights, it's over.
Mm-hmm.
Like so I don't know. I think Chandler obviously gives him, brings a lot to the table in a fight against him. Um, Mainly a big puncher who can, who's going to go in there and try to bulldog you. So
Mm-hmm.
I feel like he's almost like a super version of Mendez. And we saw what Mendez did, for those first 2 rounds, for the first
Yeah.
round in 4 minutes and 50 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's potentially what could be. I don't think Chandler will necessarily use his wrestling like that, but I don't know why he wouldn't. It's always
Mm-hmm.
been one of Chandler's great weapons has been his ability to take someone down, control
Mm-hmm.
him, and beat him up. And you know, it's kind of do or die for him in this fight. You go
Yeah.
you go 1-4 in the UFC, you're pretty much although fighting the
Mm-hmm.
best of the best, you're going to be considered a bit of a washout.
Mm-hmm.
You have to it might be a retirement fight for him anyway, the amount of money he might make off this
Yeah.
fight. It might be the end of the
Especially
road.
being shelved as long as he has, and you know what I mean, waiting for this because they had to pretty much had to wait for McGregor to do all his. I forget what Dana White said about the stuff with the movie or that horrible movie, but it's
Yeah, I mean it's been a long waiting game, and I was the first to say I never thought this would happen. I mean, obviously it's taken about 2 years, so
Mhm,
it's not like I was completely wrong initially, but yeah, it's I mean it's gonna happen.
mhm. What's up, Antoine? Antoine Willis chiming in asking, "Do you think Chandler gets a title shot if he beats Connor?" No, I do not. I
Well,
think,
bring the ranking. Do you have the rankings still available, Ed?
yeah, I can bring
All
him
right,
up.
throw those back up real quick. Let me take a look at it. Let's try to figure out what we got here because we also got announced for UFC 302 in Newark on June 1st. Dustin Poirier getting the title shot against Islam Makhachev. Um, so where we got here? Chandler's at 7.
Mhm,
Uh, you already got Poirier getting one. I would say Dariush and Gamrot are irrelevant. If Chandler wins, he jumps them easily. Gagey coming off a loss. Oliveira coming off a loss. I suppose perhaps. I mean, if Saryukin's not ready to fight and the champ wants a quick turnaround, I suppose it's not out of the question that the winner of this fight could even Conor McGregor. I mean,
Yeah.
he'd be the first one they jump in line with. But I mean, Gaethje's going to have some time off, and he
Mhm.
can't fight for the title coming off of that loss. And Oliveira, like I say, yeah, same thing. He's already lost to the champ, and he's coming off a loss. I mean, Saryukin, as long as Saryukin it wants to fight, I think the next fight will be his after Poirier. Unless Poirier wins. If Poirier wins, then it could be anything and anybody at that point. Yeah, Chandler Poirier
Mhm.
rematch, Chandler McGregor, or McGregor Poirier. What would be four?
Mhm.
Um, so that, yeah, I don't think it's out of the
Yeah, I
question.
mean, a win would insert him into obviously the top 10, but
It would get him in the
yeah.
where he just needs to be in the right place in the right time.
Mhm.
You know, um,
Yeah.
so you can already turning down a title shot on a quick turnaround though. I really don't blame him. Um,
Mhm. That's
but
another good question Antoine's asking. Also, do you guys think Dustin retires in the cage this summer if he loses? It's already kind of been mentioned more than enough times to that the one thing Dana White said, I forget. I think he said it way years back when came up to Chuck Liddell's retirement or whoever. But when he said once guys start saying it and thinking about it, it's probably time to do it, and that seems to have been something that's held true as long as I've been watching the sport. Anyone that considers it, or if it's floating around their mind, it's because there's something inside of them, their body, whether it be mental or just the aches and pains aren't going away as fast. You don't know what these guys are, especially with the way the fighters train now and what the UFC demands of them. It's another bar, it's another level, and only a young man's body can keep up with that. So I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if an L comes. He does decide to hang it up.
I suppose it could matter how he loses, as well. But yeah, but I don't think that would be the end of Dustin Poirier. I don't think that would be his last fight. He might take a couple years
Mhm.
off, but I feel like we would see Dustin Poirier in some other form or fashion. Maybe
Yeah.
it's in like the boxing circuit kind of thing going on, or something. I mean, he is known for his hands, so that's a possibility. I just don't think it would be the end of him in combat sports, but I could see him stepping away from some of
Mhm.
the grind of everything
That's
that's involved with
He's
being
up
MMA.
for 302, right? The Newark
Yes,
one.
yes.
So speaking of 302, that's a nice way to segue into something that I know that actually we meant to talk about at the beginning of the podcast, but I was just I'm so aggravated with how wrong I was about 300. We jumped right into that. But the new gloves. Remember we mentioned them last week. UFC's got new gloves finally on the horizon. It only took them Lord knows how long to get new gloves. The first reaction, I was guilty of it too. First thing I want to say was, what does it do about eye pokes, eye pokes, eye pokes? And there was media in attendance when they did the presentation. The presentation's on their YouTube channel. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it because it is addressed, and the gloves do address eye pokes. I wrote a pretty good article about it over at mymmanews.com if you want to check it out. And if you subscribe to my newsletter, I actually went a little deeper. I caught the Eric McGracken combat sports law disease and went down this MMA glove rabbit hole where, and we've had Matt Marsden on the podcast talking about Bellator's gloves. So in 2014, Everlast made this Power Lock MMA glove, which is the gloves that the Bellator we know and love, use from 2014, the last year Bjorn Rebney was president of Bellator, right through the whole Scott Coker era up until last December. And that was a glove that pretty much I found again, it's in my newsletter, but I found the article where they talk about the glove design and everything, and it's pretty much everything that the Everlast glove is doing or has did. A better curvature in the hand. You can make a tighter fist. You can make better grips, and it's supposed to make it easier and less likely for you to want to do this with your hands just to get your hands blood flowing in your hands because the leather's not as thick and stuff like that. Um, so the new gloves are supposed to debut at UFC 302. People were right away. They're talking about the Holloway Gaethje fight because Holloway did poke Gaethje in the eye twice, but the gloves weren't being used yet. The only time they were used before they announced them was in the last Contender Series, Dana White Contender Series, because Duncan French from the UFC PI, senior VP of the UFC PI, he was at the presentation and he said that's where they collected the data to see if they were working. And of all the Contender Series, that was the one where they saw a lower or reduced occurrence of eye pokes. So they definitely addressed that, and we'll see. I mean, time will tell, but the time starts at UFC 302. So if you didn't check out, go to MyMMAnews.com and read my gloves piece if you want more details on that. But for all of us that had the knee jerk reaction of trying to shit on the UFC not doing anything about it, they finally are. But again, they could have also done it in 2014 when Everlast put out pretty much the same gloves. So I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that because I went into the glove black hole over the weekend.
No, that's good to hear because I was just kind of seeing the same thing. Like, oh, they're gold now. Sweet.
Yeah, that's but that's, I mean, to the detriment. The UFC is so corporate, and you know, everything's all about making sure you mention, oh, our partners and the deals, and here's the new colors. So the safety part kind of went under the radar. It was the push was, look at all our colors. This color is going to be for X, Y, and Z, and the, you know, gold for champions and red for, you know, road to UFC and blah blah blah, and that all kind of overshadowed what I forget the lady's name from the I think they have like a consumer or department. I forget her position, but it's in the video. But she the first thing they mentioned is the eye pokes. And again, Duncan French, that was sitting there with Brendan Fitzgerald. And in front of all the media that was in attendance, you would have thought someone else would have wrote something more about that, or talked about it, addressed it. But all we saw was them holding up pictures in their own personal social media and saying, "Hey, look at the new gloves. Hey, these feel pretty cool." But yeah, there seems to have been a lot of homework done on them. Again, Everlast had the gloves out, but you know, the UFC likes to say they made their own thing, so they finally did with this. So I'm glad to hear that one.
Good. So we'll see that going forward in 302 in June, as well through Fight Week and moving on through the future. Yeah, I guess the immediate future is this Friday. Or is that your guess as good as mine on what night PFL is on? Is it,
It is Friday.
sometime between now and Sunday there will be a PFL event. Depends which way the moon is facing on the, solar,
Mm,
But so I guess Friday.
yeah, Friday.
And wasn't really going to really acknowledge it because they do such a, they don't do a good job letting us know this stuff that's going
You
on.
want to know what's crazy? I couldn't help but laugh my ass off at the UFC 300 post fight press conference. Dana White came at them so hard about that. I hope that it makes them do a better job about letting stuff know. You know, I guess that maybe in their minds that just posting on social media is enough. I mean, you're on ESPN. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but Dana White was like, I didn't even know there was a PFL until someone like told him that there was one the night before UFC 300. And the funny thing is, there was media there. This is my little shot at the folks that, you know, who licks the UFC's boot heels when it comes to. So there was media there that covered both the PFL and UFC 300. However, because there was a power slap event also on Friday night, there's media that went to the power slap and UFC 300. So you know who's doing what
Kevin
based on.
Iole must have been up all night just enjoying all that stuff,
Yeah.
licking away.
Yeah. He's licking all right. He's licking something, but yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
sorry. You
No,
start mentioning the shills who lick
dude.
boots, and
No, because
he's like the leader of the pack.
yeah, you know, like James Lynch was out there. He went out there to work. He was out there for Sportskeeda. He was at PFL. He was at UFC 300. He did his stuff on his YouTube channel. I even chimed in on the Q&A live that he did from his hotel room. So when James Lynch gets to an event, he goes all in. But there was other people that were there just to make sure that they stay in the good graces of, you know, it is what it is. But anyway,
So 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 there
you know
so
who
there
those people are.
so there was a PFL. See, this is where I'm going to question Dana White. So on Friday night, with the competition being an organization that's selling buy two get two free tickets and putting about 400 people in the crowd, according to Dana White, Power Slap is the fastest growing sport in the planet. With what, like, I mean, one championship level viewership,
I was gonna say,
and
gotta.
and was there a lot of live crowd? Was there no arenas in Vegas available to have it the night before UFC 300? I mean, I'm sure 12,000 people would have showed up to the MGM Grand Garden,
Mm.
right? Like,
Mm.
I mean, obviously not. They couldn't get if they couldn't even get the
Mm.
PFL crowd to show up to Slap Fight.
Mm.
That's why
Mm.
they don't do it. Otherwise, they would.
Mhm.
They could have the Cox basketball gym at it used to be called Cox Pavilion, where they had Fight Night One at UNLV. I mean, there's a million small little places you could put 4 or 5 thousand people,
Mhm.
but no, no. I mean, so I think that's a joke. Slap Fight is
Yeah.
insanely stupid, and the fact that I don't know. I mean, it's TikTok sports, so maybe that's where it gets its thing, its
That's
views, and
that's a
its
good name
fame and
for it.
glory.
Yeah, TikTok
Um,
Sports. Right up
well,
there
I've
with
well I've been
swallowing
calling
your own
Tyson
shit.
right now because like the Tyson fight, the Jake Paul Tyson thing, like I've seen more people come out of the
Mm.
woodwork and be like, "My God, have you seen that training footage?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, the one where it's sped up and it's TikTok." I'm like,
Mhm.
"This is the first promoted. This is like the first ever TikTok Tyson fight. Like it's we're getting a 60-year-old man in TikTok videos,
Mhm.
basically with like 5-second clips sped up 4 times speed, and people are falling over for themselves like, oh, he's gonna murder Jake Paul. Like, I mean, and it's like you're falling for it.
Mhm.
Like they even know it's a joke. They don't even know what the rules are going to be right now because they got a 60-year-old man going in the ring, and people are like, oh, I don't
Mhm.
know. Maybe Tyson wins. I would not put a penny on him to win. I think he actually
It's
probably
gonna
gets
be on
smashed.
Netflix though, so that's good.
I'm gonna watch it, and I didn't even mean to bring this up, but the co-main event got announced today.
Yeah,
Uh,
Katie
Katie
Taylor and
Taylor,
Amanda Serrano.
Amanda Serrano,
Two.
great women's
Yeah.
boxing match, rematch from their first title fight where they sold out MSG.
Mhm.
So that's I mean that's great, and that's what I like about Jake Paul. Jake Paul's
Yeah.
giving these women the eyes that they both deserve. Not everybody's into women's boxing. I get it, but that's not the point. These are the two of the best women boxers in the world.
Mhm.
Arguably the best, top two, maybe the top three if you start Cameron and a couple
Mhm.
of those other women in there. But um, I mean, this is it. So they get a co-main event. They're going to get a huge payday. Get to fight in Dallas Stadium.
Mm.
I think it's a bit of a testament. Depending
Uh,
on how many people they get there, I mean,
yeah.
is it going to be like K1 where they did at the Coliseum and there was 18,000 people in a 120,000 seat arena, or are we going to
Mhm.
get are they going to get 80,000 people to show up? I mean, I don't know. It's big location, Dallas, lots of people, but I don't know what the ticket prices are going to be. I don't know what it's all about the promotion. We don't, and I don't know. I guess you promote through stuff that we don't see very often anymore because it seems like very, very light
Yeah, I was
promotion.
actually surprised to get that press release today from Most Valuable Promotions about the Serrano Taylor thing. But I mean, it looks like they're turning up the volume and saying like let's reach out to as many people as we can to get the word out. So I mean, that's one thing. I mean, if like how you call John Jones is a natural fighter athlete. Jake Paul is definitely a natural at marketing. If you watch his Untold on Netflix, you'll see that it's just something that came natural. Especially when he talks about how he gets started. I mean, he's somebody that I can't help after seeing how he's come into our space. I can't help but be interested in how his mind works and how he just manages to draw attention to folks. So good job, good job. Whatever he's doing, he does a better job than the PFL. Um,
No, that's true. But I would like, I don't know. I'm not a ton on Netflix, but like, I would think that like you would start turning your Netflix on, and the main first screen you would see should be, hey, reminder, June,
Mhm.
whatever, Tyson versus Paul. Like, that's how you're going to get the eyes of like the casual guy who doesn't really follow fights but sees Mike Tyson's name, and like that's how
Mhm.
I would think, and the people that are already subscribed to Netflix, so they're going to be,
Mhm.
they're on it a lot, but
Let's
that's a ways down the line.
yeah, it is a ways down the line. Not too far down the line. I'm just one last question from Antoine here. That's pretty good. How do you feel about Strickland versus Costa 5 round co-main event? I meant to ask you that when it got announced. What do you think about that fight? I don't know if I'm like I don't know if it's interesting enough. I think co-main event is the correct placement for that fight, but um, a lot of 5 round co-main events lately.
I like that when it's
Yeah.
an important fight.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how important this is because I don't think Costa's really a top contender at this point coming off of a loss. I know Strickland is as well, but his was a title fight. Seems to me this is kind of Strickland taking like the entertaining fight for a promise from the UFC to get a title fight with a win here. Um, I like Costa. I like him a lot. He's one of my favorite dudes to watch fight because I know he always brings it. I just think stylistically, I think Strickland might be able to shut him down. If he uses
Mm-hmm.
his boxing any bit like he's done against Duplessis and against Adesanya, I think he'll keep Costa away with his punches,
Mm-hmm.
and I think he'll avoid the big shot. Um, so I would probably lean Strickland, um, but I'll probably be rooting for Costa to pull off some wheel kick or some lunacy and then watch him jump around the cage like Mark Coleman at the Pride Grand Prix, that guy kind of thing, where he's going crazy. So I don't know. Entertaining fight, co-main event, I guess. It's hard. It's hard coming off this last card
Mm-hmm.
because I want to be like, well, that should probably be the opening fight for the
You
pay
know,
per view.
there's
You
no
know,
UFC this weekend, and I think that's a great move by them because we do need this card. The card was so great. It gives people a little bit of scarcity because they don't take off that often, and it gives folks time to kind of just like absorb, you know, what a great event it was. They really did such a good job. Um, you
see,
know,
I don't. I know it's less fights, but my
mhm,
God, I feel like it would be so much more if your next one you were looking forward to was May 4th, and you just knew there was another pay per view with another title fight, and Jose Aldo coming back. Like I
mhm,
feel as opposed to like, all right, let's get ready for I don't know. I don't want to disrespect anybody, but let's get ready for the 18th ranked heavyweight against the 13th ranked heavyweight.
mhm,
In an Apex. Like to me, it's a momentum killer. So I don't know. I without looking, but I don't think we have anything that's gonna blow the doors off until even the next pay per view is not great. But
yeah,
Pantoja and Aldo is can't miss dudes. And then after that, it's the McGregor and or the
mhm,
Poirier. I mean that card's probably going to be good. Um, they seem to like New Jersey right now. You seem to be kind of the favorable corner there, getting a couple events so close together.
yeah,
Um, so it's good for the East Coast because it was. I feel
yeah,
like
a little dry out here,
post
yeah,
COVID, I feel like it was awfully dry. I feel like the
yeah,
West Coast kind of got a little bit more kick early with that stuff coming back, but yeah, I mean, like I said, Korshkov fighting the main event. Some really good fights this weekend or Friday on PFL.
mhm,
So tune in for that if you can find it. I believe it'll probably be ESPN Plus. Um,
yeah,
I think that pretty much wraps us up. Next weekend
mhm,
we will have our BKFC Knucklemania 4 preview show, as I will be heading to Knucklemania a week from this Saturday
that's
uh,
right.
to
That's
enjoy the blood and guts of that.
a good
Uh,
one.
yeah, so we get to look forward to that next week. Until then, check out the show at Combat Hour on Twitter, Coast to Coast Combat Hour on Instagram. Follow me, Matthew Hawkins, at MMA Hawk 21 on Twitter and Instagram. Follow Ed at Carbazol on Twitter, Carb Beerzol on Instagram, and Oldhead Carb on Twitch. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for listening, everyone, and have a good night.